Life is all about the gray area undefined. Life is filled with parallels. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can choose to live your life out loud, or you can choose the in between or the middle of the road. Inside the gray area, that's where life happens. Welcome to Inside the Gray Area, sponsored by McGregor. Hi, everybody. I'm here today with Amanda Buzo with the Hickman Lowder law firm. The law firm was founded in 1970. I actually had the privilege of meeting Janet Lowder, one of the partners, and have known her for years. And they are an estate planning law firm dealing in special needs, wills, trusts, estate planning, and many other things that come along with that profession. Just like a physician practice, there's really no difference other than the fact that there's specialties in law as well as there are in medicine. So their specialty happens to be estate planning and also elder law, which is a main priority of McGregor, of course. So Amanda, tell us what tugged at your heartstrings, what encouraged you to get into this particular type of practice?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me here today, Leanne. I really appreciate the opportunity. I always knew I wanted to go to law school, and I attended The Ohio State University for undergrad. And one of my professors was an attorney who had a child with special needs and who emphasized that if you're planning for an elder or a loved one with a disability, that there's unique planning opportunities. And that just always stuck with me. And so fast forward to law school, and I had an opportunity to clerk or intern at Hickman Lowder and loved it. And I was fortunate that when I passed the bar, they offered me a position, and I was there for many years. And I recently returned to the firm a year ago. So I think it was that initial conversation with my professor, but both professionally and personally, elder law and special needs planning has touched my family, and it's continually reinforced that this is the area that I should be in.
And the firm is not only in Cuyahoga County, but also Lorain County and throughout the state of Ohio. So you really cover the entire state.
Yes, we're very fortunate. I currently reside in Lorain County. I've lived there for over 20 years, so I love that we have a Lorain County office, but we do go where our clients need us, which is throughout the state of Ohio.
So tell us why somebody should uh, ask for help from an estate planning attorney.
Oh, great question. Well, estate planning is much broader than it used to be. We used to think estate planning was a will, right? Like that's what you thought about. You were only planning if you should pass away. Now, estate planning really encompasses lifetime planning. It's financial powers of attorney. It's healthcare powers of attorney. It's potentially Medicaid or long-term care planning. It's not just the simple will anymore. It's really the continuum of lifetime care.
And you mentioned one area of special needs, which brings to light a lot of different things. I mean, we have families, older adults who have children with special needs. Some have been at war and suffer from PTSD. Some have maybe been in, unfortunately, an automobile or motorcycle accident and have had a severe head trauma. And what we hear from families a lot is, they're worried that they'll be gone and, what needs to be prepared for their loved one so they're taken care of in their absence. Talk a little bit more about the special needs part of the practice.
That is of particular interest to me. I would say our firm is unique in the sense that we do both the elder law and the special needs planning. So, no matter what the age of the individual, we feel that we can provide assistance. And there's a lot of planning opportunities when there's a parent or a grandparent who has a child or another loved one with special needs with a disability. So there's unique planning opportunities so that they can preserve assets for the benefit of that individual. Because in all honesty, if we have more assets available, we have more options. But even if there aren't asset planning, there's still the opportunity to ensure that next generation has access to Medicaid or SSI. We talk about childhood disability benefits and then making sure that that person is going to be taken care of. We also handle guardianships, which not a lot of attorneys in Ohio do. And we can discuss, well, what are the guardianship alternatives? If we do need a guardian, how is that appointed? Can we name a successor? What's going to happen if the parent or grandparent passes? How do we make sure that someone else is going to be able to carry the torch that older generation has started?
And we see a lot of what's known as elder orphans in our industry. So they never were married, never had children. Partnerships are looked at a little differently by law. It varies among different states, of course, but speak to that because, it really, no matter how many assets you have, it's still important for that planning. Let's explore that a little bit more.
Um, you've really hit the nail on the head of, I think, a very serious issue for the clients that we serve and Ohio residents. I currently have several clients who I like the term that you used, an elder orphan. Um, and when we're looking at doing their planning, they may not have a lot of people to choose from. So there's a couple of ways we address that. First, if it makes sense, myself or another member of our firm will serve as the financial power of attorney, perhaps the healthcare power of attorney. But again, we have to make sure that we have a good relationship with that individual and that they feel comfortable with us. We also have relationships with outside organizations where maybe they can step in and be the rep payee for Social Security. Um, if unfortunately guardianship is needed at that point, we have relationships with professional and volunteer guardianships or guardians where we may ask them to be able to step in and take care of that individual. We also are fortunate, our law firm has a social worker on staff. And we feel that that's important because of the clientele that we serve. And that social worker will go and visit the individual, make sure their needs are being met. If there's any kind of concerns, they'll come back to the attorney and say, I think we need to discuss X, Y, and Z. So it's to help ensure that there's additional community support out there.
And when a law firm has a ward, which is that individual that they're being guardian for, it's almost like they now have a son or daughter looking out for them, really, because many of them, especially as people are living longer, they don't really have anybody else that they can rely on. So we know that law firms play a viable role in that. You mentioned, when we talk about estate planning, you mentioned the assignment of a financial power of attorney or a healthcare power of attorney. How does one decide? Who do they appoint to that?
Great question. So for a financial power of attorney, I think that it's helpful to name your agent, the person who carries out your wishes, as someone who's going to be trustworthy, literally someone you could give your checkbook to, and that that they are going to use it in your best interest and not to help themselves.
Very important.
So definitely someone who keeps good records, who's organized. Of course, if you have a CPA or a financial professional, they're sometimes the obvious choice, but not always. In today's climate, I would say it doesn't necessarily have to be someone who lives close by. I know, for example, my dad was power of attorney for my grandmother, and she lived in a state up north, and he lived in a state down south. But he was able to handle many things electronically once he provided his power of attorney. And so you don't always have to pick the person who lives closest to you, but sometimes that's helpful. With respect to healthcare power of attorney, I think the most important thing is who is going to carry out your wishes, because the healthcare power of attorney may engage in some end of life decision making, which is not fun to think about. And some of my clients want all heroic measures. And some of my clients say, no, I do not. Please do not keep me alive. If my doctor says I'm not going to get any better. The important thing is to choose someone who's going to carry out your wishes and not impose their judgment that may be different than yours.
Yeah. What other things should we consider when looking for an attorney such as
Oh,
yourself?
sure. Um, I think because a lot of our clients we build relationships with, I think you need to be able to work with the attorney. Maybe you don't have to be best of friends, but do they have a similar philosophy on things? If you call them, do they call you back? Do you feel comfortable in that initial consultation? Are they bringing up things that are relevant to you? Um, I mean, let's also be honest. Do you feel like the price is fair for what they're offering? Are they very transparent about what they're going to do and what it might cost? I think there are many organizations out there that attorneys can be a part of that signify that they have a commitment to the elder population or special needs. For example, there's NALA, National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. They have an attorney directory where you can look up people in a specific area or use other factors and find someone that might be related to your legal needs. There's also the Special Needs Alliance, much smaller group, because they limit their membership, but that's also an indicator of the attorney's commitment to that area of practice.
And often, it comes as word of mouth.
Yes.
Somebody's had a good experience with a certain lawyer, and they refer that on to another family member. Much better than just kind of close your eyes and pointing to a list of people. But we all have to be educated consumers too. So there's nothing wrong with doing a little homework, researching, several firms, even interviewing, if you will, the attorney that you want to represent you for whatever the situation is.
For sure. Some of our clients don't have access to the internet. They may not have a cell phone that can get them to the internet or have a computer at home. But you can even go to your public library and use free internet searches, ask for assistance. But I think word of mouth is extremely valuable. Did someone else have a good experience? And I like your idea of the due diligence. Definitely do your research and be an informed consumer.
And people are living so much longer today. We have a 108-year-old
Do you really? Oh, wow.
and doing extremely well.
That's fabulous.
So, I know you're estate planners, but also somebody who could have a very long life. Part of your role is helping them to plan for that. We may retire at 65, but if you have another 40 years of retirement, you really have to give some thought to that. So,
Yes, for 100%. I completely agree with that. So, it's not just that end of life or death planning.
sure.
It's that during the lifetime planning that's as equally as important.
So, what financial component then do you bring to the table when somebody contacts, an organization like yours for that?
Sure. Well, one of the first things we do is confirm that their documents are, well, number one, that they have estate planning documents, and number two, that they give all the authority that we would need. For example, our financial powers of attorney are very broad. We do a lot of, we include a lot of powers for estate planning and Medicaid planning. Um, if you use, the state of Ohio financial power of attorney, it doesn't include those powers. So going to an attorney that is experienced with powers of attorney and making sure that they're very comprehensive is helpful. So that's the first thing we do is make sure that there are um, healthcare and financial powers of attorney, and then also make sure that they have the information in it that we would want the client to have. We evaluate whether or not a guardianship is needed, or if we can avoid guardianship because there's good powers of attorney in place, or maybe a guardianship is not needed at all. And then, of course, we get into the okay, what resources are out there, and how are we going to access those resources? For example, letting people know about McGregor and the wonderful continuum of care that is provided on your beautiful campus. Um, Getting clients in contact with the right people so that they know what is available.
Yeah. And, when we talk about finances, the other thing to consider is your home. Many people kind of you know, don't think of that first and foremost. So, um, you know, you may want to give that home to another family member. So making sure that you're avoiding probate and other things.
Probate avoidance, I think I say that about 10 times a day. It's not very expensive to do, but the benefit to your family members, is significant. And so that is definitely something that we explore when we're talking about elder law planning and or estate planning. We definitely get into that. Um, as you pointed out, a lot of our clients that come to us have someone in their family with a disability. And so we make sure that they understand some of the rules. You know, there's generally rules against gifting assets if you want to become eligible for long term care Medicaid.
Right.
But there are also exceptions to that. And a lot of those exceptions have to do with children of any age with a disability. And there's some really great planning opportunities that are available there where we can help take care of the next generation.
And I guess the other thing we should mention is family dynamics. So if you're an only child, it makes things relatively easy, especially with the support of an attorney.
Mhm.
But nevertheless, decisions are still difficult. It's challenging, it seems to be more when there's multiple children. And everybody maybe lives in a different state. They also have different feelings and opinions about what should or should not happen. So, best laid plans are that you're very explicit in what your wants and needs are so that it avoids those situations and disagreements and so forth. But I think the main thing that I would share is talk about it. You know, tell your family members, tell other loved ones, you know, what your choices are, how you want things to be handled. I even had one family who said, you know, Dad, don't give us Christmas presents anymore. You know that Susie likes this item in the house and Brad likes this items in the house. Wrap those up and give them to us as Christmas gifts or birthday gifts. And then the arguments, there's no argument. It's over and done with. But, you know, we don't, when you get to a certain age, who needs more?
Right.
We're all trying to get rid of stuff.
Right.
So, you know, kind of an interesting, you know, aspect to look at a different way of looking at things.
We definitely have those types of discussions with clients. And I agree with you. I encourage transparency. I think it's much easier to for siblings to be able to help their mom or dad when mom or dad's wishes have been expressed when everyone wasn't in the challenges of caring for someone who has maybe a chronic condition or is in the hospital or you know is in hospice. You know, those are very anxiety filled situations, and to add those emotions of maybe sibling rivalry that's been there for decades on top of that, that can be very challenging. And so I do agree with transparency for clients that really don't want to do that. We try to help them through to make sure that their documents are very clear. And I oftentimes ask for a discussion about, okay, if your children contact me, how would you want me to share this information with them? And getting the client's perspective on things so that I can reassure their children that this is what their parents want. They were fully aware of the options, and this is the option they chose.
So, how would you suggest that somebody, you know, would do their research if they want to have a conversation or a consultation, let's say? How do you folks handle that?
So we handle it a couple of ways, and I would say every attorney does it a little bit differently. We do have ethical rules about confidentiality, um, but
Important.
I believe so. You know, and we're ethically bound by that because of our profession. The way I approach it is I say, I'm more than happy to have, for example, your adult children in the room. We can talk about general things. But when we are starting to talk about who your agent's going to be, who your executor's going to be, and who's going to get your stuff if you should pass away, I'm going to ask the adult children to politely go out into the lobby. If you decide to share that information on the car ride home, that's the client's decision.
Yes.
But otherwise, I wanna make sure that my client is not being, as we say, unduly influenced, or, giving me an answer that they think their child wants to hear. Because for me, my client is that elder who's in front of me. We all need help making decisions sometimes. I've gone to the doctor and asked a trusted person to go with me because I want them to hear what the doctor has to say. So I completely understand that. But we also have to make sure all the decisions are coming from our client and are not being influenced by anyone else.
And it's never too soon to start any of this. I mean, you can always change it, you can always update it, you can always edit it. But, we want to be doing this when we're healthy and our mind is active and we're able to really, think wholeheartedly about it, not when we're in a situation where, you're not feeling well and other things are encumbering you.
I completely agree. I actually think that when someone becomes an adult, and in Ohio that's turning age 18, that they should actually start thinking about healthcare power of attorney, financial power of attorney, and maybe a simple will. And the reason why is a lot of parents are surprised that when if their child goes off to college, for example, that they no longer have the ability to make that doctor's appointment because their child is an adult. And so things like a healthcare power of attorney may be able to assist. God forbid that child gets into an accident. You wanna make sure that there's a financial power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney so the parent or other agent can step in and help that adult child. Otherwise, you're going for guardianship, which is public, and it's overseen by the probate court, and if you can avoid that with 2 simple documents, that seems like a small price to pay. I'd also suggest that anytime people experience a significant life change, a marriage, a divorce, the first time you are maybe acquiring assets, maybe you're working, if you become an individual with a disability, um, and certainly as people are aging, retiring, those are all reasons to reevaluate your estate plan. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to change anything, but at least pull out the documents, look at them. Does it make sense? Maybe your child is now 40 and you still have a guardian named in your will for them. That may no longer be necessary. And so I think that those life milestones are really reasons why people should look at their documents. If you have a relationship with an estate planning attorney, you can give them a call, go in, double check things, make sure it's where you are. Maybe the laws changed.
That can happen.
You weren't aware, which, it's hard to stay on top of everything. And your attorney can say, you know what, I think we need a new financial power of attorney. Or maybe it's time for a trust. Those kind of conversations can be had.
Well, thank you for being here today. A lot of information. We look forward to sharing more in our future podcasts for Inside the Gray Area. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you for joining Inside the Gray Area. We're here to answer all your questions and share some interesting insights. I'm Leanne O'Brien. We look forward to seeing you next time, and be sure to follow us on social media and our YouTube channel.